I wanted to hate this book so bad. And yet here we are. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Stefania. I'm a New York-based actress, audiobook narrator, giving coastal grandma girly, and these are going to be my real reviews. I had no initial draw to this book. People kept telling me that it was really, really good, and Book Talk was talking about it so fucking much that it was like life-changing and amazing and incredible and sexy, but I had zero interest. I had read the little leaflet and I was like, I can't bring myself to care, like to the point where I would not even rent it from the library because I was just like, I don't care. And maybe I have a vendetta against books that are popular. Maybe, I will admit it. Because I think that sometimes, especially with TikTok and Book Talk now becoming a thing, I love Book Talk, but people go crazy over books that I hate. And it has happened multiple times where I'm like, okay, I can't really trust these people's opinions anymore of what books are because we just don't have the same taste, and that's fine. So when all of the same people who were recommending books that I hated were recommending this one, I had no interest. This might be conspiracy theory-ish, but I feel that the TikTokification of books often rushes publication and pushes publishers to create tighter deadlines for authors or to edit books in a way that maybe would appeal more to a TikTok audience rather than just the audience that they wanted in the first place. And I think that's because publishers have not caught up yet to the modernization of book marketing. I think that they're scrambling to catch up with TikTok. There was the whole thing of bookstores and libraries potentially going out because nobody was buying physical books anymore. And that kind of started with Amazon coming out with the Kindle, and Barnes & Noble came out with the Nook, and I know that there's a couple of other ones. But ever since then, it feels like publishers and publishing houses have been scrambling to try and reinforce themselves in this industry. TikTok has given them basically a free way to do so, and so they're, of course, going to use that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like books are in higher demand now than they were 10 years ago because of things like TikTok. That's great, and that's fantastic for the book publishing world. I just feel that there is some care and consideration that needs to go into what publishing deals look like nowadays in order for these books to really be the best that they can be. Oftentimes, the books that are really popular on TikTok sometimes have glaring editing errors that should not be in books of this caliber, from publishing houses this big, from books that are this popular. There should not be glaring editing mistakes, and that kind of gives an indication of how rushed this process has become. Because if people are on TikTok and they're like,
oh my god, I really love that book by this one author, when is her next book coming out?
That publisher's pushing for them to have one within the next year, within the next 6 months. They really are, they're pushing them out. And I know that that's been a thing since forever. That is how business is made, money is made. I don't know if we've considered the detriments of TikTok to the book publishing industry. I know that there's a lot of benefit. And like I said, it's a great thing that books are making a revival in sort of pop culture and in how people are reading and what they're reading. Anyway, let me get off my soapbox here. So when this particular book got popular, I had no interest. And that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I actually listened to the audiobook of the first two while reading the ebooks. So some of my comments have to do with the audiobook version as well, but most of it is going to be about the story and about the writing itself. And also, I did not listen to the dramatized version. I don't know. If I'm listening to an audiobook, it's because I want to create, I don't know. If I'm listening to an audiobook, I would rather one person is creating the world rather than almost making an audio drama out of it. That's just a personal taste thing. I know people love the dramatized version, but that's not for me. Although as an audiobook narrator, that'd be really fun to do. It's like voice acting. Well, audiobook narration is voice acting, but in a different way. I'm going to go back on my soapbox for 1 second and talk about the themes of this book. Yes, it's about dragons. Yes, it's about romance and, like an enemies to lovers, love triangle, finding power within yourself. There is also a lot of criticism of governments, which I appreciate. I don't think it's the most complex criticism of governments, but I think that it is an important criticism of governments, especially in today's climate. I think that there is a lot of parallels that can be drawn. And I do appreciate that a book like this is coming into the mainstream to bring to the forefront of people's minds the fact that the government could lie to you, or that there is censorship, that there is a restriction of knowledge, that there's a punishment of rebellion or of uprising. There is the brutalities of war and what it means for a country to go to war and to have been in war for such a long time. I don't think it's a mistake in regards to what propaganda means and what the crux of this story is. So I think the one thing that I'm on the third book, I'm on Onyx Storm right now. I haven't finished it yet, so no spoilers. But one thing that I think is really smart is that Fourth Wing itself, the first book, sets up Basgiath and sets up the plot more about being Violet surviving a war college and being prepared to go to war, and that there's a war against a common enemy. And that's what you think that the crux is going to be, that there's this brooding bad boy who is maybe going to start a rebellion, but like it's not really touched upon. And I think, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Fourth Wing, maybe don't listen to the rest of this. When at the end we discover that the common enemy is not the enemy, but actually allies in a greater common enemy. Genius. And again, I know it is not the most like profound or it's been done before, obviously, but like it's refreshing to see in a book of this caliber and of this popularity. And I think hopefully it is sending the message to people. I mean, there's always people who read a book and they're like, oh my, like when the Hunger Games came out, there were legitimately people being like,
oh wow, that was a good book. That could never happen to us.
And it's like, babe, Suzanne Collins only writes about things that are important to say. Art comes out of a need to show humanity. So it's not a mistake. Anyway, let's get into it. So why I wanted to hate this book. I know I just said this. I feel like this book has been written 100 times. I do. There's the whole trope of a weak, fragile girl who like, oh my God, she's put in an impossible situation and she has to prove herself and she ends up being the most powerful one. Like, okay. There's a best friend from childhood that she has a crush on, and there's a brooding bad boy who has a vendetta against her, who she thinks is so hot, and it's been done a million times before. That being said, they say like every story in the world comes from 7 original stories, so I don't know how much that argument goes in my favor. I know that this trope happens because the most interesting way to tell a story is to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. Ordinary being like what their day-to-day life is. So like obviously the main character is going to be the extraordinary. I know that. So at what point do all these extraordinary stories become ordinary? You know what I mean? Like within their world, they are extraordinary. But to us as readers, when do these extraordinary circumstances become so ordinary that it's, I don't know. I just think there's like, I think that there's a conversation to be had about what exceptionalism is, and especially putting a woman in a position where she's too weak or too fragile. And I also understand, I want a disclaimer here. I also understand that Violet is a source of representation for a lot of the disabled community, that she's not fragile and weak because she's fragile and weak. Like she was born with a body condition that is not suitable to the rigorousness of something like Basgiath War College. So I really do appreciate that there's representation there, that people feel seen by her and feel strength in her becoming one of her own. So that is not my complaint. My complaint is when you make someone, regardless of their body differences, you make someone feel small. And I know you little authors, I know you have to start somewhere to go somewhere. I get that. I do. But I'm so tired of women being seen as the weakling. I'm so tired of it. Another thing is, I feel like I've just outgrown my romantasy era. I mean, in high school, I loved Court of Thorns and Roses and Throne of Glass and like all of the Cruel Prince. Like, I just feel maybe I've grown out of it. It's kind of sad for me because like that used to be my favorite genre of book, and now it's still very entertaining for me to read, but it's not. It doesn't give me the same excitement and like joy that it used to. So all this to say, like, take this with a grain of salt. This is my opinion. You can love this book, you can hate this book. This is just what I thought about it. Another thing with this romantasy genre is I literally get so much secondhand embarrassment from these characters. When they mess something up, it literally like it gives me a physical sensation, especially with like the romance aspect in a fantasy book, because there's always something crazy happening. Like, oh my God, especially Violet and Xaden. I'm like, oh my God, guys, if you literally just talk to each other, like so much could be solved. But because they don't, it makes me like, it gives me anxiety. And I know that's the purpose of like books and art, is to make you feel something. But I like, oh my God, it makes me so, like I would literally be listening to the audiobook and I'm internally cringing or I'm internally like anxious. I would have to turn it off because I'm like, I need a break. And I know it's going to resolve itself, hopefully. But like, oh my God, I'm just so stressed. I'm so stressed, and I don't know if that's a normal response to have to books, or if like as an actor, I'm like putting myself in their shoes literally at that moment. It becomes visceral. I mean, maybe that's the point, and maybe people love that feeling, but like what? Just communicate, guys. It's crazy. Why did I read it? That is the question of the day. With all of these cons I've given you, why did I rate it? Well, to be honest, I wanted to know what the hype was. It's been what? It's been on Book Talk for 2-3 years now, and it's been consistent on Book Talk for 2-3 years now. I wanted to know what the hype was. I get FOMO. I hate being left out. And also, I was reading a lot of like literary fiction last year, and it was kind of depressing me. I was reading a lot about like women in their 20s being heartbroken or trying to find themselves in a new city. I was like, I want something entertaining and fun to finish out the year. So that's when I started Fourth Wing. Disclaimer, if you haven't read Fourth Wing yet, there will be spoilers. Watch ahead at your own risk. Anyway, so this book follows Violet Sorngale, the daughter of a powerful general commander of Basgaev War College, the best dragon war college in the land, as she embarks on her first year. Her mom says, hey girl, I know you wanted to be an academic. You're going to go to war college. She didn't say it like that, but so we follow her from the parapet, which is like a very dangerous test, and then her entry into the Dragon Riders, and then throughout her first year. So along the way, we meet like a group of loyal friends. We meet some friends from the past, and we meet some rebellion enemies who want Violet dead because her mom executed their parents. Needless to say, Basgaev is not a warm and fuzzy place. There is death around every corner, and Violet isn't strong yet. So instead, she's lethally intelligent. This girl got like a library up here. So her intelligence is what gets her through trial after trial after trial, and eventually bonds her to the strongest dragon in the land, as well as another little dragon named Andarna, my queen Andarna. And she becomes the first person ever to bond two dragons. Of course she does. So a lot of the themes of the first book are like family and duty and honor, intelligence as power, freedom under occupation, government propaganda, and war as an act of subjugation. Like I said, like this book has a message, and I get it. Let's start with the positives. One thing that I actually really did like about this book is how easy the world building was to understand from the get-go. Because sometimes with YA world building, it's either like pushed to the side in favor of the characters, or it's so dense that within the first chapter, I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what language they're speaking. I don't know what this thing means. But this one was really easy to grasp, like the rules and the structures of the world. And the characters were pretty easily outlined from the start. So another thing that hooked me was that death was immediately part of this book. Like from the first few chapters, death was not only a possibility for Violet, but like was a reality with her literally seeing characters die in front of her. And characters that Yarros smartly made out to seem like they were going to last a little bit. Out. Gone in a couple pages. Literally death. Especially like when books about war shy away from the aspect of death. It feels like sugarcoating or babying the readers rather than like, we're talking about war. We're talking about people dying, people losing their family. And like that is the reality. And sometimes, you know, they try to mask it as the deaths being characters that are not important to the main character. But instead in this one, it's like, it's people that she cares about that are dying, she's seeing die in front of her. There's a lot of death. I mean, if there's one thing about Violet, she gracefully does not lose her humanity of death. Like death for her, no matter how much everyone else in the writer quadrant is like telling her that death is a part of being a writer, she still feels human about it. And that's really sweet. Also, it kind of, similar to like, I would say Game of Thrones-esque, it puts us readers on our toes because we don't know if a character we really like in one chapter or in one book is going to end up dead. That was the thing about Game of Thrones that I think a lot of people liked, was that when they went to battle or when there was like something happening, you didn't know if your favorite character was going to make it out of there. Sometimes there's some safety in books where you know that they're going to put the main characters in danger, but they're never going to kill them. Whereas in this one, like, they will kill him. They'll kill him. Let's talk about Xaden. I'm a sucker for a brooding, dark history, sexy man who kind of wants to kill you, but he won't. It's like a tease. It's like,
Oh my god, yes, I'm not spoiling that, but will you kill me? But he's a soft boy underneath, and like...
Okay, yeah. Like, I get it. Like a hard boy who's only soft for like one girl. Like, I get it. I ate Xaden up. I really did. And I appreciate Rebecca Yarros saying outwardly that Xaden is not a white man. Because there are people out there who will make every person in a fantasy series white because they can only imagine white people in a fantasy series. On the other hand, Dane, just so annoying. And I know that's the point. Like, he's supposed to be annoying. He's supposed to be like belittling Violet. But it's like, he was giving like Gale in the Hunger Games, where I was just like, oh my god, give it up already. You are holding on to the past. You are trying to keep her safe. And like, man who wants to baby a woman who is literally being successful, who is literally stronger than him. Let's talk about it. Oh, I'm sorry. Is your masculinity getting hurt? Are you just feeling like you have to protect this poor woman? I know that there's history. Listen, you don't have to tell me things I already know. I know that they have a history. I know that Dane knows Violet and he knows about her condition and like that she can actually get hurt. But you just can't stand seeing a woman be successful. You just can't stand seeing a woman with a sexier man than you. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that, Dane? So let's go to Violet. Violet herself. Look, she is smart. She's badass. I mean, she literally defies the odds, and it wasn't just out of sheer luck. Like, there was actual reasoning for her defying the odds, and the reasoning being, like, she's so insanely smart. But, Rebecca, let me speak to you clearly. Like, let me just speak one-on-one to you. I cannot read the words fragile and weak one more time without, like, throwing this book across the room. I really can't. I swear it's on site, girl. Like, I can't. And I'm glad it really only lasted through Fourth Wing. Like, Iron Flame and Onyx Storm don't have that. And again, like I said, I know we have to start somewhere to go somewhere. But, I get it. She's weak. I get it. She's fragile. I don't want to read about it every 5 seconds. I love dragons. I love that they're not friendly and like cuddly sidekicks, but like they're choosing humans to bond with them because of them. Like the dragons are choosing. The riders are not choosing the dragons. And I really appreciate that aspect of giving the most powerful creatures some autonomy in this. So I love Taryn and Ardarn and Taryn and Andarna. And speaking of pronunciation, I got some tea from TikTok, of course, because I am on TikTok. It seems that all of these names came from Scottish Gaelic, but the audiobook narration really like anglifies the name. And it's weird because as an audiobook narrator, like you get the pronunciations from the author or the publisher. Like there is no audiobook narrator out there who wants to mispronounce the names. You know what I mean? Like especially names that you don't know. You are checking, you are sending them to the editor, you are sending them to the author, being like, how do you want this name pronounced? How do you want this name pronounced? Like there is direction every step of the way, especially in a publishing house this big. There is direction. I don't understand why she would name them all with Gaelic and then not reinforce the pronunciation. And this might just be TikTok tea, but like there was something floating around that she apparently didn't care about how it was pronounced. And like, I don't know. It was just like a weird discrepancy that it just begs the question of like, why use a different language at all if you don't want to respect it? And forgive me because I do not speak Scottish Gaelic and I tried to look up the pronunciation of these names. I'm trying my best. Please correct me if I'm wrong about any of these names or any of these pronunciations. I've just been listening to the audiobook for however many weeks now, so it's kind of like in my brain and in my mouth. But I do want to get it right because it is a language that people speak that is deeply rooted in a specific culture. Okay, last thing about positives, and then we'll move on to the negatives. I do like I said at the top, that it puts a nice commentary on government propaganda and war as a tool for citizen subjugation. You know, like having a common enemy to gain the people's trust. But what if that enemy isn't the one you should be worried about? That's so real in any political climate, but like especially today. Let's move on to reasons I didn't like it so much. This plot was done 100 times. I said that already. I don't know if it's a fair judgment. It was very predictable for me exactly where it was going. Of course, Violet and Xaden were going to get together. Of course, Violet is going to be the exception to the dragon rule. Of course, Violet is going to end up with the most powerful signet. Like, of course. I did like, spoiler alert, the ending, Brendan being alive. Good spoiler alert, not predictable. Thank you. And you know, the rebellion being a team effort with the Griffin Riders and like the rebellion kids was a nice little change of pace. It wasn't just like Xaden was starting a revolution within Besgaith. It was like a whole other system and like a way bigger network. The love triangle was stupid. Thank God it did not last long. I don't know who still wants these love triangles. We all know how they're gonna end. I like a love triangle. Okay, did y'all read Shatter Me? That's another question. Like that love triangle I appreciated because in the first book or the first 2 books, I don't remember. It's been a while. There was already an established relationship with one character. And then a new character comes in. Then there's a love triangle because the other character betrayed her. That's a love triangle I'm okay with.
A love triangle that's just like, oh my god, my childhood best friend. Like, oh my god, I used to have such a big crush on him because he was the only boy around.
I'm tired of it. I am tired of it. I promise it's okay if Violet's from the get-go like, I only see Dane as a friend. I only see him as a friend. This one you guys might be calling me crazy for. I don't think the sex scenes needed to be in as much detail. Maybe that's just a personal preference, okay? The pornographic descriptions that go beyond just like what's happening, but like literally like, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. I think that they are trying to stimulate the reader into getting horny and take me out of the story because I want them to explore intimacy and like, sure, have sex. Like, I'm not a prude, but like, I just think that some people read these books specifically for the smut, and that's fine. Like, if that's you, that's fine. But there's such a push for smut for the sake of smut. And books that have such rich plot lines, it just feels like you're adding that on because, you know, that's like what one subsection of your audience wants, rather than actually adding anything to anything. And I think it turns books of this genre into kind of like a vessel for delivering smut, rather than like the actual really interesting comparisons of our world to this fantasy world and like what this means for our understanding of what we are living through. It feels like a reduction of these really complex and juicy characters into literally just like they're hot and they have really hot sex. I don't know. It just doesn't feel justified with the tone of the rest of the story. Maybe that's the point. I don't need pages and pages and pages of like graphic descriptions of what they're doing to each other. And then the next chapter being like, oh my God, we're going to war and someone's dying. Like it I don't know. It just feels weird. And I think that there's a larger conversation about smut in contemporary literature. And I don't think I have a fully developed discussion or like point in my mind yet. I'm interested to know what you guys think about smut in books, because there's a time and place for it. And I don't think that this is one of those times. And I don't know. Done. I'm done. I promise I'm done. If you guys have read this book, I'm really interested to hear like what your thoughts were. I'm halfway through Onyx Storm right now. So I don't know how y'all waited three years for these books to come out in succession, because I'm already like, I want to be done. I want to be complete. Overall, I think I would give Fourth Wing a 7 out of 10. It was entertaining. I mean, it kept me compelled. I finished it in a week. I breezed through Iron Flame too. There were certain things that I liked and certain things that I didn't. But I mean, if you're just looking for something easy, entertaining with some deeper themes in it, I do think I would recommend this book. Thanks for coming on this little journey with me. I'm sorry I was on my soapbox 100 times. And I hope to see you guys soon with another book. I think the next one is gonna it's gonna scare some of you. Okay, bye.